The Dershow.
Various university groups now have now changed their policies and said that we now support boycotts against Israel or against other countries that engage in, but the only country they ever have boycotts against are Israel's. No boycott against Syria, no boycott against Iran, no boycott against Cuba. But now governing bodies of universities have now come out in favor of boycotts. So what we're seeing is a major attack on American universities, and we should not take it. We should not sit back. I have been associated with universities now for almost 70 years. I started being a student at Brooklyn College. I was the president of the student government in 1955. 1955. That's 68, 69 years ago. And I've been involved with universities ever since. I think I know a little bit about universities. When I started at Brooklyn College, the president of the university, the president of Brooklyn College, the academic president of Brooklyn College wanted to ban communists from teaching. I fought against that. I was virulently anti-communist. I hated communists. I hated communism. People often ask me who manages my social media reels, and it's a company called View, V-I-E-W, Movement. View Movement. They've done great work for me. I have to tell you, they've really been terrific, and they've boosted my viewership. So if you're looking to boost your own social media presence with short form videos, use the code Dershow, capital, all caps, DERSHOW, to save 15% on your service with them. And if you want to see more about this, you can see it in the link in the description below. But I didn't think that universities should dictate who can teach economics and who can teach. In the case of Brooklyn College, it was, I think, French literature. Professor Slockhauer, who was fired because I think he took the Fifth Amendment instead of answering questions about whether he was a communist. I assume he was a communist back in the 1930s. 1930s, a lot of people were communists because, unfortunately, in the 1930s, like in universities today, there was no middle. There was a choice in many parts of Europe. You're either going to be a fascist or a communist. And if you were an anti-fascist, you were a communist. And so I defended the right of communists to teach. I didn't defend communism, although, on Martha's Vineyard, they would probably accuse me of defending the isms that whose speech I defended, because the people here are too stupid, many of them, to understand the difference between being a lawyer and being an advocate for a cause, being a political advocate for a cause. But put that aside. So what are we going to do about American universities? What we're going to do is we're going to fight back. We're going to bring lawsuits. We're going to bring claims under various aspects of the Civil Rights Act, cutting off funding from universities that tolerate this kind of bigotry. They're not universities. They are not universities. I had a student the other day who I saw on a program in which he said he was told to write a paper about the Middle East and he wants to get into law school. So he deliberately wrote a paper that was opposed to everything he stood for. He took views that were exactly the opposite of his personal views in order to pass the course. Because if he took a view that was different from the professor would flunk him. And we've seen that. We've seen a professor at a major university refuse to write a recommendation for an excellent student because that student was a Zionist and wanted to spend her year away in Israel. No, I'm not going to recommend you, even though you're a great student, even though you deserve a recommendation. I'm not going to recommend you because I'm not going to help you go to that country that I don't like. What is going on in American universities, and why are we tolerating it? So we have to be prepared. The students are prepared. The anti-Israel, radical anti-American students that are going back to campus are prepared. They've already bought their tents. They have their signs ready. They're ready to close down classes. They're ready to engage in all the same kind of behavior that got all these university presidents fired. More are coming. More are coming. Any university president that tolerates this kind of activity on campuses should be fired, should be forced to resign, the way the president of Harvard the president of University of Pennsylvania, the president of Columbia, and many other presidents have been forced to resign. We have to fight back. Universities are too important. Universities are the future, the bedrock of our society and of our scientific development. Right now, or at least as of a couple of years ago, American universities were the finest in the world. That's going to stop. That's not going to be true anymore. Universities are no longer teaching. They are propagandizing. And this is absolutely essential. I want to hear from the candidates for president of the United States. I want to hear from Kamala Harris. I want to hear from Donald Trump what they intend to do about these universities. They're federally funded. As a result of them being federally funded, they can be federally defunded. No American taxpayer should be required to pay for propaganda rather than education. Education is supposed to produce open-mindedness, not closed-mindedness. I've said this before. I taught at Harvard for 50 years. I've taught at other universities as guest or visiting professor or lecturer. In the classroom, I never expressed a personal point of view. I expressed points of view, but they were for argument's sake. Often they were points of view that were different from my own. For example, I defended capital punishment in the classroom because nobody else would. And I wanted the students to hear all sides of the issue. So the idea that a professor uses that almost sacred lectern as a way of grading students based on their ideas is pure McCarthyism. And it's McCarthyism that should not be allowed to exist at major universities. We have weapons. We have contributions from donors. Many of them have stopped making contributions to universities as long as these universities are propaganda mills. We have state legislatures. We have the federal government. Universities depend largely on external funding. Tuition doesn't cover most courses and most costs. And so if the other side is using means that are improper, we should use means that are proper to respond to that. We should be telling universities that they will not be allowed to continue to get federal funding if they continue to tolerate on campus bigotry that discriminates against students based on their viewpoints.